So module 3, major topics are addressing modes, memory map, steps of executing a program, pseudo instructions and exceptions, signed and unsigned instruction, and floating point instructions. Out of which the first topics of addressing mode, memory map has been taken in the class. Steps of executing a program, pseudo instruction and exceptions, I had taken an online mode through the Canvas platform. So the thing which is left, which I had already taken in the Canvas mode, but because of technical issues, so I have shifted to Google Classroom. So here we will be just briefing through signed and unsigned instructions and floating point instructions. This will be the topics of discussion today. So just to make the recording clearer, my name is Anoop Thomas. I represent Avenue School of Engineering and Technology, Department of Electronics and Communication, with a class to S4 EC students on the topic computer organization, Module 3, Part 3, which is the major topics are signed and unsigned instructions and floating point. You move to the slides. You are hopefully there is no issue with the slides. You are able to see the slides, right? There is an issue, just reply back. Somebody can pick up the mic and tell that there is an issue. If there is no issues, don't need to reply back. You assume that there is no issues. So hopefully all are present. Nobody has left the mic and gone off. I have an option of seeing that aspect if you are not aware of. Anyway, so coming back to what we need to study. So you have two topics, signed and unsigned instructions, and then you have floating points. It's very simple and it's not that difficult to understand. Signed and unsigned, this is something which is related to something which you already studied. You already know that your numbers can be represented in a signed manner or unsigned manner. We are speaking about a 32-bit MIPS processor, so you have a 32-bit setup in which you can put the numbers. And the numbers can be put as signed and unsigned. Based on that, there are certain instructions which can work both in the signed form and an unsigned form. Huge difference will be if you are using unsigned, the range will be from all zeros to all ones, FFFFF. So that will be the range. So it doesn't have the negative number. But if it's a signed number, follows a 2's complement structure where you will have a negative value. The first bit, MSB bit will signify whether it's a first one number or a zero number, a positive number or a negative number. And if it's a positive number, you take the number. If it's a negative number, it is represent a 2's complement, take the 1's complement, add 1 to it, you get the number. And it is a negative number. But the range of the positive numbers will reduce because you have only 32 bits. You divide it almost halfway into the positive number. That's the issue in the case of signed numbers. So you have certain instructions which support both these particular kinds of number representations. So addition, subtraction, multiplication, division, set less than, loads. All these four types of instructions support both these kinds of number structures, that is your signed and unsigned number structure. So we'll see each of these set of instructions. Instructions are things given to the MIPS microprocessor to execute. So we are speaking about assembly language. We are speaking about a language which the MIPS understands better than the human beings. We are still in the machine level, not in the human level. So this is something which I already told. 2's complement representation, set and instructions that come inside and unsigned fibers. So this is the general introduction. So addition and subtraction is an example. So the point here they are telling that if you have two large numbers, if you are going for a signed interpretation, you will have a particular answer. If it's an unsigned interpretation, a completely different answer. You know that because you are having the 2's complement representation. But the inherent principle behind this is that you know the range. You know the range in which you are able to express your signed numbers. We have already seen it as part of your labs of your digital electronics, as part of your data electronic course, even in the first two modules, I think the first module of your CU. So the whole point is when you have a signed number, you have a particular range at which the numbers can be expressed. If it goes above it, it won't be able to express. So as you can see, it's a big number. If it's an unsigned number, this is the first one is the answer. If it's a signed number, it's a completely different answer. So again, same happens when you have addition of two huge negative numbers. Use a positive result and use a huge negative number. You're getting a very positive result for this kind of questions. Again, it depends upon the range. This is coming out of the range of your particular. So automatically, this will not be supported. 8,000 is the maximum rate in which you can represent a negative number. That's the maximum limit of your negative number. If you go back to this terminology, you will get it. So this will get a wrong answer. The answer that you have where will be wrong because you have used uh, ranges above what is feasible. This is called as arithmetic overflow. So if you are using numbers above what can be represented using the 32-bit structure, mainly when it comes to your sign numbers, you have something called as arithmetic overflow. This doesn't happen when it comes for your let's say unsigned numbers. It happens when you go for your signed number. This is called as arithmetic overflow. This is the major differentiation between the usage of your signed numbers and unsigned numbers. Hopefully everything is clear. Do you have any technical issues? If you have any technical issues, revert back through your mics. I'll wait for 1 second. Somebody is facing any sound-based issues or something. As in the class, you are not responding, so I assume that everything is fine. Moving on to the next one. Okay, so again, we have already seen something called as an exception, which is something which happens when something out of the ordinary is getting executed. Out of the flow, something happens. Divide by zero issues, hardware interrupts, software interrupts, instruction which is not present. The same thing happens for an arithmetic overflow. So if you are using a signed number and you are using in a way in which the range is not, you are using a number which is out of the range, arithmetic overflow happens. So this happens for your signed version. So that's the difference between your signed and unsigned versions. For signed versions, there is a possibility of arithmetic flow, and this particular mathematic flow is considered as an exception. That is considered only if you are using an a signed number. So the signed versions of addition and subtraction are add, addi, and sub. Unsigned versions are addu, ADDIU, and sub-U. As you can see, the default version is the signed version, not the unsigned version. Unsigned version is something which is forced upon you by using an extra U, whereas the signed version is the default version. You would add is addition. One back, add I is addition immediate. You give immediate data and the register value, you add it and get the result. Sub is the usual default subtraction operation. So this is the two versions, and only difference is in signed version you have overflow, you have an exception which happens when you have an overflow. As an unsigned version, there is nothing called as an overflow. That's the difference. Same goes for your multiplication. Again, multiplication, the range, the issues remain the same. Here, as you can see, the product of this thing, if it's considered to be a unsigned number, will be a very huge number. Signed number, it's just one because it is having a huge complement of percentage. So again, multiply and division instructions, states, operands, gain as a default number. Again, point to be understood. Default level, it is taken as unsigned, assigned, and use you inside. So, multi and div. Div is the instructions, multi u and multi u and div u is your unsigned. The same thing happens with respect to multiplication and division, but so there is no note on arithmetic workflow. Let's just understand that you have two variants, the signed variant and unsigned variant of the multiplication. Set less than, another important operation which will have its issue is the comparison operation. So if you are using a signed number, the comparison is different. If you are using an unsigned number, the comparison is completely different. So comparison is something which will be affected based on the type of number that you are using, the kind of number that you are using. So you have two types of set less than. That means a register is set based on whether your numbers are less than or greater than whatever. You can either use to register for it or a register and an immediate value. So two types of instructions are there: set less than T, and set less than, that is SLT, and set less than immediate. That Is basically both the difference between these two instructions. One uses two registers, the other one uses one register and immediate value. So you have two versions of it, signed and unsigned versions. Again, signed is the default version, unsigned is the post upon version using U. So SLTI is there, SLTU, SLTIU is there. Again, you can easily understand the difference. In sign comparison, 0x 8000 is less than any other number because it's the most, I mean, this is the lowest possible negative number that can be represented using a 32-bit structure with 2's complement. You just evaluate how it is done. That's something. So you can ABCD choices questions. You can expect questions based on these kind of numbering systems. Okay. Anyway, coming back, because it's a negative 2's complement number, and okay, so unsigned number comparison is a completely different scenario because this is considered a positive number, so you have greater numbers and lesser numbers. So that's the difference between SLT, SI, and SLT, SLTI, and SLT, USC, signed and unsigned. Moving along. Again, when it comes to your immediate data, sign extension is very significant. When it comes to unsigned data, sign extends the immediate before trading it as an unsigned. So it extends the sign. Whatever the sign is, it extends the immediate data before as a unsigned number. Now, when you do that, compares, this is an immediate SLT. I use an unsigned number. $S1 is compared with FFF because one is taking immediate as a large positive number. So this is what is being used when it comes to unsigned numbers. So you extend the sign and the music. Just that you will have the extension which is happening when it comes to your set less than operation. This is required as far as implementation. It's not important. So the last type of instruction which supports the unsigned and signed interpretation is your load. Now, what is the significance of load when it comes to signed and unsigned? Load is something which takes values into the registers, loading the values from the memory into your registers. What does signed and unsigned have there with respect to your operation? So you have basically signed and unsigned here. You see what is the difference. LB is your load byte. LBU is your load byte unsigned. Similar. The default is signed. Unsigned is a forced apposition. LB sign extends the byte. LBU 0 extends the byte. So that's the difference. So LB, the load byte sign extends. It has significance for the sign, and that is getting extended. Whereas LBU extends only 0 because there is no significance. It's an unsigned value. So there is no point in having a sign. So just extend 0. So it uses this particular structure to get the 32-bit register value. Okay. Again, similarly goes for your signed and unsigned half words. So you are loading your half word, that is your 16-bit byte. It's 8-bit. Half word. This has significance only if your size of your particular loading value is less than 32 bits. If the 32-bit value, you are not worried about whether it's signed or unsigned. There is no difference at all. But when it becomes an 8-bit or a 16-bit value, and then you are loading it into a 32-bit value, you will have to extend the rest of the digits, bits. So it can either be a sign extension or it can be a 0 extension. So that's the difference that we are speaking. So that happens only for the byte loading and your half word loads. Okay. So in the case of half word loads also, 2 bytes is the lower half and sign or 0 extend the upper half of the district. So if it's a sign extension for LH, it will be sign extension. LHU, it will be 0 extension. Same thing goes for your half word loads. So that's the difference in respect to it. So that's it with respect to your signed and unsigned numbers, signed and unsigned instruction. The whole way of interpreting your number, whether signed or unsigned. And point to be noted here: signed is the default thing, unsigned is something which is forced upon based on the additional U which is used in the instructions. So the last topic in this is something which just requires a briefing view. The point here is, one second. Other window and see. So somebody is left. 49 is present. everything is fine. So we will go back to the presentation, the last point. So you have floating point instructions which are uh, basically supports floating point. What is floating point is something which you are already aware of. So what is floating point is something which you are already aware of. So you use the Mandisa exponential method to represent the pointed number or the decimal number, pointed number. And it gives a huge range to it. You have single precision and double precision representation. You already studied. To go back to your module one, I'm not going to take that particular topic. Just be aware that you have a point. So you have digital numbers like 2, 3, 4, and you have 2.1, 2.2, 2.3. You have a standard way of representing these numbers using something called as a floating point, which gives a huge range. Basically uses the exponential and Mandisa operation. You have a standard of it. One particular standard is called single precision. The other one is called as double precision. Single precision use 32-bit for representing the number. Double precision use 64 bits to represent the particular number. So that's the difference in representation. And floating point numbers are supported with the help of a coprocessor called as coprocessor 1. So it is not directly implemented with MIPS. It is supported using a coprocessor called as coprocessor 1. It's an optional. MIPS architecture is an optional for floating point number. The point important point to be understood. It's an optional floating point. So all MIPS architecture-based processors won't implement floating point instructions, but there is an option which is available. And if you want, you can have this particular coprocessor included. Coprocessor is cooperative processor which works along with the processor. So if you have a coprocessor 1 uh, which comes along with the processor, then it can support your floating point instructions. So it has its own set of registers. You have 32-bit floating point registers, and the keyword there is $F0. I just go back to your particular module 3 and see if it's there default here value. But the point to be noted, it's an optional thing. With your MIPS architecture supports it, but there might be certain MIPS processors which doesn't need or doesn't take in floating point. So 32-bit floating point registers, and you have $F0. F represents floating point, then double precision. It's double precision. You keep it in even numbers. $F0, $F2, $F4. You don't have a different set of registers for that. You combine two registers and then make it work with respect to your 16 even number registers. $F0, $F2, $F4. So that is the basics of your floating point instruction. Optional floating point coprocessor, coprocessor 1 is used. 32-bit floating point registers are used. And if it's a double precision, you use even registers is 12 values. That's it. So again, similar to your usual methods, you have certain registers associated with your floating point coming into picture when you are having a floating point coprocessor. All such kind of registers starts with the keyword $F. F is the keyword. F word or the floating point word is being used. So the $F V0 V1 is used for procedure returns, P0 P3 for temporary variables, A0 A1 for procedure arguments, T4 T5 for temporary variables, S0 S5 for saved variable. This is quite similar to what happens for the usual structure, but all these having F values when you have the additional option of floating point instruction. Just keep this in mind. This is called as a floating point register set. So you have $F0 to $31, which act $F0 to $F31, which is used as your default set of registers. Then you have V0, P0, A0, T4, S4, S0, and all, which are used for specific purposes. Okay, so this comes into picture when you have your floating point instructions. So something which you have to be aware of. Now, floating point instructions are different from the usual instructions. What is the way in which a floating point instructions look like? Because it's again a 32-bit structure. We have seen the usual set of instructions. It's a completely different instruction set, which is 7 instructions which are supported. So it has a completely different structure. The structure is shown there. It consists of 6 fields. Usual fields of FT, FS, and FD are there. The destination operand field and the source operand fields of FT and FS. The difference being instead of your usual R, it's going as F, F, F. F is for floating points, called as F type instruction. And you have an opcode, you have cop. Cop is basically the coprocessor field in the function field. To So the function field and the cop field indicate the type of instruction. Op field is fixed. If you are using a floating point instruction, the op field is always 70. 10001 is the value which is there in op field. So 1001 signifies that this is a floating point instruction. What is a floating point instruction? Is defined by COP and your function field. Now COP, if it's 60, it's single point, single precision. If it's 70, it's double precision. And function is implemented is what is the operation. So point is, you have a 32-bit structure. It is divided into 6 segments, similar to what you have done for your usual instructions. You have FT, source registers, and destination register. FT and FS acts as your source operands, and your FD acts as your destination operand. Now, major difference is you have 3 fields: OP, COP, and F function T. Out of which OP gives information with respect to whether it's a coprocessor instruction. And COP tells you whether it's a single precision operation or a double precision operation. 60 represents single precision, 70 represents double precision. Function FENCT describes what is the instruction that is going to be happening. So these are the instructions which are supported: addition, subtraction, multiplication, division, negation, etc. These are the 6 instructions which are supported under your floating point instruction set. Addition, add.s, add.d. S stands for single precision, D stands for double precision. Sub.s, sub.d, mul.s, mul.d, div.s, div.d, neg.s, neg.d, abs.s, abs.d. So these are the 6 instructions which are supported under your floating point instructions. Addition will have a corresponding functional value. Subtraction will have a corresponding functional value. We are not bothered about what the values are, but according to the coding scheme, we will have a particular value which goes into here. Op field is fixed for any floating point instruction. COP field is determined whether it's a .s value or a .d value. Add will have a corresponding functional bits here, but it might be different from the usual addition bits because it might be different, it might not be different, because you already have a field which tells you whether it's a processor. I guess this will be same. That is with respect to your floating point instructions and how the 32-bit F-type machine instruction format looks like. Again, this was your usual arithmetic operations: addition, subtraction, multiplication, division, negation, and absolute value. Now you have the possibility of branching instruction. There's 2 parts to it. 2 kinds of branches are supported. Branches are instruction which makes the change in your program counter value. The flow of your execution is changed. That is your if else and decision making statements will completely change the flow of your execution, which is implemented by changing your program counter value. Okay. So the floating point branches have 2 parts. Branching is supported. It has 2 parts. One is a compare instruction used to set or clear the floating point conditional flag. It is implemented using a flag called as floating point conditional flag at PCOND. Conditional branch checks the value of the flag and then makes a corresponding move to the corresponding instruction which is required to be executed. So branching, floating point branches, 2 parts. First, a comparison instruction which sets up a particular flag called as FP flag, and based on this particular value of the flag, you have a conditional flag. So set of instructions which comes in this particular segment is compare instruction. These compare instructions include equality instructions, less than instructions, then your less than or equal to instructions. Then also there is this comparison instructions. Along with the comparison instructions, you have a jump. That is the combination. Then you have conditional branches. Okay. So these are the 2 sets of instructions which are supported under your floating point instruction. So in compare instructions, you have equality instructions which are given as sc.seq.s, sc.seq.s. EQ stands for equality instructions. Then less than c.lt.s, c.lt. C stands for compare. S is your C, tells you whether it's a single precision or double precision. And then you have C wave, which stands for comparison operation. C.lt.s, C.lt.d, and C.le.s, C.le.d. So you have 3 sets of instructions: one to check equality, second one to check whether it's less than, third one to check if less than or equal to. Okay, so it can be done in single precision and double precision. These are the comparison instructions which are included. After that, you have a conditional branch instruction. Okay, so VC1F, VC1T. So you have a branching statement based on the value of your FPCONT, which is your conditional instruction. So you compare your particular values using your compare instructions, that is equality instruction, less than instruction, or less than or equal to instruction. And based on the result of it, based on whether your result is false or true, you make a jump. You make a conditional jump, conditional branch to a particular point. That is, if this particular condition is equal, you move to this particular point. Usual if else statement. That can be implemented in the floating point instructions as well using a conditional value flag called as FPCONT. Okay. So BC1F and BC1T. BC1F is branch if condition is false. BC1T is branch if condition is true. Okay, that is based on FPCONT is true or false respect. So it's false. This BC1F will be taken to performed with sequence, I mean, SEQ, LT, and LE followed by BC. So it's a combination instruction. The branching happens with the help of two instructions. One will be a comparison operation. Three kinds of comparisons: equality comparison, less than comparison, or less than or equal to comparison. That result will be stored in a register called as PCONT, conditional register, and then based on the value of it, the value floating point registers are loaded and stored from memory using reducible output. The floating point registers can be loaded and stored from and also followed by again loading of the operations happens using LWC1 and SWC1. LW and SW. LW is for load, SW is for store. C1 is the process. C1 comes into picture. Here also you had C1. Why C1? C1 is something which is associated with coprocessor 1. That is why you have LWC1 and SWC1. So which tells that is being taken care by the coprocessor 1, because that is a processor which supports your floating point operation. So floating point instructions are optional instructions which are provided in MIPS if you have a coprocessor 1 along with it. If you don't have the coprocessor 1, it is not available in your MIPS instruction. So it's an optional thing. It supports addition, subtraction, it supports branching instructions, it supports load and store instructions, it has registers, it has certain flags, it has certain registers of its own for its execution. So this is the basic idea about your floating point instruction. So everything is taken from the same text. Module 3 is completely from this textbook. So that concludes your module 3. On a brief, module 3 is a completely theoretical module with mainly theory-oriented things, which are easy to score in your exams, but quite difficult to understand. Understanding is required for your further studies, but for your exams, you should be able to easily score marks from this particular. You try to go through the particular slides which are given, go through the different lectures which are provided to you. If you have any doubts with respect to this particular module, you can come back to me. So I will conclude this particular session by stopping my recording. And again, 49 is present. Many people are, hopefully everybody has been logged in here. Good to see that in other cases it was always keeping logged in. Almost all people have been logged in. One has left. I don't know who has been leaving. The rest everybody seems to be here. I'm stopping this, and you can tell your time use by switching on your videos. I hope that should be fine. Let's see how this particular thing called as Google Meet works. I will stop the recording now. You can switch on your videos and just tell bye. Hello. 1 second.